But you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. And now here's your host, Rich Barris.
All right, welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Follow me on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com. Rumble Watchers, right there in the top corner. See the Locals button? Go ahead and hit it and become a part of the revolution in data journalism. If you're not on Rumble, go ahead. Laura puts the links out in all the chats. Subscribe to Rumble. Move on over. All right. The hour is late. Move on over to Rumble. All right. But again, yeah, sign up, become part of the community. We're going to go over the nuts and bolts of the survey today. And if you're part of the Locals community, you'll get all of that extra content, distribution, participation in the surveys, help us design the surveys. You'll learn a lot about how surveys are designed and how they are conducted. So again, right there in the button in the top of the menu on Rumble. Locals, sign up, peoplespundit.locals.com. All right. We are, like I said, going to get into the nuts and bolts of the survey today. And before I do, I just want to make a comment on other polls because I constantly get a question. Well, what about this other poll? You know, Harvard-Harris has Trump up by 6. You have Trump up by 6. But now look at the Politico Morning Consult poll and look at the Economist YouGov poll. They suck. I don't pay attention to other polls, especially when I'm polling. All right. I just don't. When we get closer to elections, Laura will tell you, I completely tune them out. There are maybe 2 pollsters, 3 pollsters tops that I'll really bother to look at. And it's not because it's going to influence anything I do. I just want to know, general ballpark where they're at as well, because there are a handful of us who continuously get this right. And there are the rest of them who continue to get it wrong. There is no way to reconcile a Republican +7 on the generic ballot with a new poll that comes out showing Democrats +6. Somebody is wrong and somebody is right. Somebody is doing things wrong and somebody is doing things right. That's why accuracy matters. Okay? Accuracy matters, which you can get that merch in the description below, whether you're watching on Rumble, it's in the description. You're watching on even the rest of them. It's in the description. Represent.com/people's pundit hyphen or whatever this is, right? Accuracy matters because it really does come down to track record. I ignore the rest of those guys because I didn't have a Biden +11 in Michigan. I didn't have a Biden +13 or whatever ridiculous number in Wisconsin. I didn't have a Biden +10 or 11 in Pennsylvania. We and a very few others have repeatedly shown races in portrayed in our polling the more accurate, picture in these races. Whereas you have these repeat offenders, and The Economist is among the worst polls out there. YouGov, whether they're giving their data to CBS or giving their data to The Economist, those people then take that data and decide what they're going to do with it. All right? YouGov is basically just collecting it from their panel, which is a consumer panel. It's not even a voter panel. They don't even apply very strict screens. There's no way to verify. You understand? It could be, like I said this in 2016. I'm going to bring it up again. You're going to get 22% of the electorate being 18 to 29 because there's just a young college girl who wants to earn points to get a Kohl's card because she needs a new bra. She doesn't intend to actually vote, and in fact may not even be registered to vote.
But her boobs need support.
So, bottom line, YouGov's got her in their panel. All right? And then not for nothing, but Reuters and Ipsos, the rest of them, they use the knowledge panel. It's not a good panel. No offense. It's just, look, again, no offense. It's just what it comes down to. Cute little aggregators and fake little pollster scorecards don't outweigh someone's track record. And there are those of us who are in the realm of the real world, and the rest of them are not. Again, and I told you this when we approach Christmas, to get ready for them to totally reverse themselves. This is what they do. 2010, 2014. There is no such thing as a D+6 or more national electorate. And in fact, Gallup, Rasmussen, Pew Research, us at Big Data Poll, we all are finding more Americans are identifying as Republicans, even though their registration is not Republican. So they're living in an alternative universe or reality. One they want. Again, it's one they want. Is it the one that history tells us is going to be real? No. Democrats won the generic popular vote for the House in 2018. What was supposed to be as good of a Democratic cycle as you could get by 8 points. They're going to win a first-term incumbent midterm popular vote margin for the House by 6? It's lunacy. So I don't pay any attention to it because it's garbage. And you aggregators out there who repeatedly don't put the rest of us who are better than you on your little average should be ashamed of yourselves at this point.
You can take your ball and go home.
They have taken their ball and go home. And while they're at home, they're repeatedly embarrassed. If you want to continue to be embarrassed, knock yourself out. Every election that you get embarrassed, I gain followers. It's great.
Man.
Doesn't bother me. I'm looking out for you. So let's get to the nuts and bolts of the survey, because I want to show you when I told you that I think I was actually being pretty fake, because I see a lot of, first of all, for the aggregators out there who do put our stuff in, please take that R away. I am not a Republican pollster.
Independent.
Look, even the New York Post characterized it correctly for a reason, because I probably went off on a 10-minute rant about how I can't stand to be associated with Republicans, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it. I'm not a Republican pollster. If I liked a Democrat that I believed in, I would poll for a Democrat. I know that may piss some of my viewers off, but if there was somebody out there like Kennedy or something, you're damn right I would do it. The fact of the matter is,
there are no more.
They're just not there. It's not my fault. It's just not right. So I tend to poll more for Republican candidates. But I poll for corporations. I poll for branding purposes. We conduct market research. Lawyers, right? I mean, do not associate me with the Republican Party, who I am constantly in a day-to-day battle with. Day-to-day. I live and breathe fighting BS. And by the way, it comes from the right as well.
Mm-hmm.
Comes from the RNC. It comes from the National Republican Congressional Committee. It comes from state parties all across the country. So please take that R away, because I am not a Republican pollster. And so with that in mind, let's take a look first at the participation by region across the country. So who did we talk to? What region of the country made up the vast majority of the 2040 the 2040 respondents we spoke to, interviews we conducted. And actually, we conducted about 2,400 interviews. But this is what I'm talking about. Or what was it? I could go back and look. Probably closer to 24. But again, people lie. Shocker.
No.
People lie. YouGov can't catch it. The Economist, how the hell would they know? Do they have access to the Aristotle National Voter File Database? Nope. Maybe that's why their election projection model blows. They are routinely the worst model every year. I mean, look, again, this is garbage, total garbage. But you wouldn't know that if this is who you source your data. I mean, it's just it, bottom line. All right, here we go. And by the way, I would like to say, because I do want to give a shout out, for some of the people we work with. You might have noticed Quinnipiac, who is finding even lower approval ratings than we are for Joe Biden. You might notice that they absolutely changed their methodology, and they almost appeared to mimic the suggestion I gave them when I accused them of fudging their Ohio and Iowa numbers, which I do believe they did. All right. Look who they're working with now. Dinata.
Bravo.
Who also has a relationship with Aristotle. So if you want to append your data to make sure voters aren't lying to you, that's a great start. If you want to append it to make sure the people that you got on your panel are actually registered voters, that's a very good start. So don't you find it at least a little bit weird? Or not even weird, not weird. Don't you find it like there's a relationship here? Causation, not even correlation, it's causation. You abandoned archaic dinosaur methodology for evolving with this new brave world we live in, alongside people who have been much more accurate than you. You adopted some of the things they suggested you adopt, and lo and behold, you tend to be more in their universe now. Which is the correct universe. There's only, listen, maybe there are string theory-like kind of universes out there, folks, but that's not politics. There's one reality, and then there's the rest of the wishful thinking idiocy crowd. And by the way, you may remember I said this in 18. In what world did Republicans think they were going to hold on to the House of Representatives when all predictive indicators suggested they would not? Now, I am not above understanding some people who are like, well, what about, young Kim? She was robbed. Yes, young Kim was robbed. There were other races as well. The Democrats did a very good job of putting independents into races where they know, because the research over decades tells them, that kind of Ross Perot kind of voter, if there's a binary choice, will go overwhelmingly for the Republican. But if there's not, and there's an independent or an American independent or a tax reform party yes, they will pull those votes. And in a handful of races, that was the margin. It was the margin. So but history told us that Democrats would take the House. The Senate was a completely different ballpark, which is why when I did take on this felonious, because it should be criminal. When I took on this felonious lying narrative, it was on the Senate. Because Rick Scott was going to beat Bill Nelson. Because Mike Braun was going to beat. Oh, look, I forgot his name already. Look at Joe Donnelly. Yet you had Fox News and others come out with these Donnelly +7s, and somehow the now Senator Hawley in Missouri was going to be tied with Claire McCaskill. He thrashed Claire McCaskill. I mean, this was crazy. We're talking about 13-point misses for CNN, for Fox News, for Reuters, Beto O'Rourke. They actually, again, they had Texas Blue. Was it close? Yeah, it was close. But you missed outside your sampling error. And you missed outside your sampling error in a load of them as well. All right. So anyway, let's get into this. This is the regional participation. And this distribution, really, of how they were distributed along the country. I know, because my crowd, my viewership is very savvy. I know they're going to say, Rich, you missed the Western states. This is the challenge that we had. So just put that under, it's the challenge we have all the time, but put it under your hat. We did go back in to go get more areas like Montana and Utah, right? And Nevada, right? Arizona. But this is, of course, you're going to have those urban metro areas rack up. And I think a lot of these panels are having the problems I'm not going to tell them what to do. I'm just not anymore. I'm done. I prefer to be right while they look foolish. Okay. But the fact is, they're allowing those metro areas to fill up their quotas. That's what they're doing. I'm not going to tell them how to fix that, but you can't do that. You have to sit back and say, is this an accurate representation of the voters of Texas? Is it, or not even the South? Is this an accurate representation of the Midwest? You can tell clearly here that our dip for Biden in the Northeast is real. The Northeast was well represented in this poll. In the raw, actually, it was a few points more than it should be. We have argued correctly, thank you for the census, we have argued correctly that the Northeast is declining in population. It is losing it to the South and parts of the Western states. The Midwest is also not the more populous area it once was, but it's at least arrested its declining trend, or at least to some degree. The Northeast has not. The Northeast is probably going to fall somewhere between 16 and 17% of the vote at this point. The only reason why they continue to be in that 18-19 level is because places like New Hampshire, and they're even small states, but their turnout rates are so damn high. They vote. Minnesota, turnout rates are enormous. They vote. So they help the Midwest, But as you see larger turnouts in states like Florida and Texas, you're going to see that where these people are primarily losing their population to, by the way. Florida, Texas, North Carolina. As you see those turnout rates increase, you're going to see the Northeast decline as a share of the voting population. So in any event, this month, it didn't really help Democrats, and it did not help Joe Biden much at all, because the Northeast has soured on both. You will still see it as the most liberal region of the country, but generally speaking, it is soured on both. The West, the Midwest, the South, they have been trending toward disapproval, and they have been trending towards the Republicans on the generic ballot. It is the decline among support for Democrats and Joe Biden in the Northeast that has really caused some damage. So when I see civics or whoever, polling New Jersey, and they have Biden underwater in New Jersey by a few points, I believe it. Because our New Jersey, we got quite a bit in Jersey, and it was not good for Joe Biden. And it came disproportionately from metro areas of New Jersey. It didn't come from rural areas. Morristown, didn't even, it came from metro areas. All right. What else about the nuts and bolts of this survey? All right. Yeah. So for those who are on locals, you have the, I thought I had it up here, but I guess I didn't. Give me a second. Let me change it. For those on locals, again, sign up, People's Pundit, locals.com, Rumble users, right up there. There's the locals button. You have this, but I'm going to read a few things for everybody else who was watching. We really would look, I'm in love with MarketSite because of their data analytics capabilities, their ability to make sure you take human error out of the equation when we do weights and so many other things when it comes to data cleaning and validation, and then weighting. Just nobody we've seen has done it better or have the capabilities that they have. That being said, locals, I'm not a fan of the dashboards. I want something that's a little bit more human readable. You can click, after I give you the crosstabs, you can click on the link to the crosstabs. I want something that showcases and also is allowed to have better text abilities. If I want to write something in there that I think is pertinent, particularly methodology. At least something about methodology should be able to be in the public view of the crosstabs, but you can't see it unless you're looking at it from our end. And that stinks. Everybody who visits the public version of those crosstabs should see. The Public Polling Project Winter 2022 National Survey was conducted by Big Data Poll, interviewed 2,040 registered voters nationally. via online survey panel from January 23rd to 25th. Survey sampling error is 2.1% at a 95% confidence interval. Results were weighted to represent the national voter file demographics to include gender, age, race, and region. It's important to note that sampling errors for subgroups are higher. All right. So, I mean, we see it because we're putting it in the descriptive, but it just doesn't show publicly. And so I have to create what I gave to like locals manually. And that's the reason for like the 2-day delay. It's just a pain. All right. So the first demographic we did is party, just to show people, everyone always wants to know how much of what. Again, there are more. This was about even 35-35 this time. There are more people, and it really is 34.5. Independents were 27.8. Something else was 3.2. Third-party voters make up 3.2 of the sample. There were more people who self-identified as Republicans this month. And I told you in fall that trend was, we saw that.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, we saw it all the way going back to Virginia. We put up the voter file analysis models for locals community, for local supporters. You saw that it went from D+4 to even. And what happened, by the way? The electorate was basically even. It was D+1, which we polled it at D+1. Go back and look how the Democratic advantage in 17, in 20, in 2012. So when I tell you these trends are going on, what I'm saying, rest assured, believe it. Believe it. All right. Liberals are about 24%. That's another thing. There are more people who are identifying as moderate or conservative. Actually, conservatives edged out moderates for the first time. First time in the year since Joe Biden was elected. Yeah. So just please tell him to just wait. Okay, because it's getting obnoxious. 47 point. I know you. I know you're all over. Laura knows, like, I just can't stand when I'm constantly getting binged during the show. All right, males 47.8, females 52.2, Hispanics about 11%, whites 72.5, blacks and African Americans 12, 2.8 Asians about 3%, Native American or Native Indian, Alaskan Native 1, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander about 3/10, all other about 1.4. So a very typical. A little bit whiter, but look at 2020. It was actually rather white. And the bottom line is, this could be like a 74% white electorate moving into 2022. I just don't see this enthusiasm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Among Asians tend to vote at kind of high rates, at least higher than some others. But I'm just not seeing this young minority enthusiasm, which I did not see in Virginia either. And look what happened. What were they? 8%, 9%? It was abysmal. So when I look even at age, 18 to 24 was 8.6, and 25 to 29 was 7. Coming to a grand total of about 16%. I may be too generous here.
You're always generous.
It may be as low as like 13%. I'm not kidding.
That's where I'm at. You know that.
Yeah, that's it. It's a midterm. And even in 2018, there were younger voters that came out. That is not, again, in history suggests that I am right. That is not what we see. They are so much more likely to say they're not going to vote. So wait until the screen. We did have a registered and a likely voter screen this month, but we weren't particularly strict. We wanted a registered voter. Likely voter, I think we'll kind of show you next week what it would be if, it was likely voters. Protestants 44.8, Catholics 22.8. Catholics, they're going to vote. They're going to vote, and so do Protestants, which is bad for the Democratic Party. Jewish voters 2.1, which tend to be liberal. Muslim 1.2, another religion 8.5, no religion 20.6. That nuns, man. they're more swingy than no religion nuns, or no religion. They are looking swingier than they have been in recent years. Postgrads just under 15%, undergrads just over a quarter, some college associates 35%, high school or less 25%, which I want to talk about because this, and by the way, for the Northeast, talking before, it's just under 19%. 18.5 is represented in the Northeast, which brings me to the 20. Let's go. We'll go over the generic ballot a second. All right. I went on War Room the other day, which I still haven't watched. I have to watch it. And you posted it, right?
Yes.
And I reposted on Get It. This is a historic butt kicking. Okay. And this is why, again, talk about, I don't know how you possibly could get any other favorable numbers for Democrats and Joe Biden at this point, because the whole argument in 2020 was that he did better than working class voters than Hillary Clinton did, right? Okay, sure. Hillary Clinton never fell below 30%. She didn't. Not in our polling. Here's what we got right now. I'm going to show you the table first. So when I show you the chart, it'll be a little bit easier to understand. All right. Here's the table. And is there water here? No. It's amazing. A lot of people don't. I think I said this the other day, but it's true. You got a lot of other, it's always people who think when they're hot, you can get dehydrated, but the cold can just wipe it right out of you, man.
No, cold makes me more dehydrated than hot. I could work out far longer in the heat than I can in the cold.
Yeah, you know what? I think I can too.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the cold.
Oh, me too.
But I do think it dehydrates you more. All right, look at high school and less. Here is basically, we put it a little bit different than other people. White versus non-white education, crossed by education. High school or less, we have here for a reason like this. This is the same as like if you see other polls say white college degree, white non-college degree. But then I just simply added non-white as well, just to show you the difference. And I want to talk a little bit about this because when we talk about the suburbs and the educated voter, right, this is a bunk argument. It was a very deceiving argument in 2020 that generally, and there's something wacky going on here. It will change, say boom, and then watch it'll disappear again. Something's going on. Maybe we got in trouble.
We probably did get in trouble.
You know what? Like I said, the hour is late. Go to Rumble. So basically, the suburbs of these so-called, anti-Trump, pro-Romney voters, they don't look the same as they did 10 years ago, ladies and gentlemen. It's not that Donald Trump was losing all of these Romney voters. It's that, and by the way, the census is out now. Anyone can go look at it, and I have been proven right. The educated voter in the suburb is far less white than it used to be. And look at the difference between non-white and white educated voters. The margin is actually pretty close. Well, it's tightened. It has tightened. Trump did lose whites with college degrees. Don't get me wrong. But not so much what kind of college degree. An associate degree, a bachelor's degree, a postgrad degree. It depends. And it actually was relatively much closer than you'd think. In many of these states, you would never have known. And I did this to show you it is really the Asian vote and black vote, any minority vote that's above some college or associate, Trump just gets clobbered in. Overall, the some college associate, he gets clobbered in. But if you look at Hispanics, for instance, Hispanics with an associate's degree, Trump is leading among. Hispanics with no college degree, it's tied. All right. It's really when you get into graduate is when he starts to get clobbered, and Republicans in general get clobbered. But among whites, it's actually very close. And you might notice the working class is the most decided that on the two-party vote, and they're the second to most undecided on where they're going to go in when it all comes down to it. So it's still a very vote-rich opportunity here for not just Trump, but Republicans in general. It's just Trump's margin is even bigger. Democrats get about 25% on the generic ballot of the white working class, no college degree. Biden gets 22. Republicans get, I think, what is it, 57.5 or something of the white working class vote. Donald Trump gets 61. All right, so he is outperforming generic Republicans among that group. Republicans do a little bit better with the non-white educated vote generically, and that's what's going on here. All right, but this is significant because in the Electoral College, you can't win states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Forget Iowa and Ohio. They're not competitive. In these numbers, they're 10-point plus blowouts. It is not competitive in the Buckeye State. It is not competitive in the Hawkeye State at all. Take them off the table. But now we're starting to move into territory like how Marquette could come up, again, another one, how they could come up with any lead for Biden when he is doing so badly with the white working class in Wisconsin is just laughable. Unlike Michigan and Pennsylvania, Wisconsin is still very rural. So it's much more likely they is suffering from a response bias, probably compounded by a social desirability bias, which we're going to look at in a little bit. I'm going to show you why it's so easy for a pollster to fall into a trap. All right. That's what happened to them in the last 2 cycles. And I assume that is what happened to them again. Because if you make sure you get these people and you're patient with them and you can finally get a complete from them, it's ugly. And you simply cannot win those states with margins like this. This is worse than Hillary Clinton's margin. They need to understand that. This is not like a 10,000 vote margin in Michigan. This is like a 100,000 vote margin in Michigan. This isn't a 40 to 70,000 vote margin in Pennsylvania. It's a 150,000 vote margin in Pennsylvania. These are blowouts. An Electoral College blowout. All right, moving on. Let's look at it again here. This is a column. Think of it as columns, even though it's erratic. The darker the color, the larger the margin. All right. You can see Trump's margin again, the biggest with whites with no college degree. Whites with some college associate's degree, Trump still has a 30-point margin. These are incredible margins. They're big. And then take a look though over at white, not Hispanic, with post-grad. I mean, Joe Biden has slipped considerably. And then, on and on and on down the line. Again, we went over this. Non-whites with a post-grad is what is expanding Joe Biden's margin with post-grad voters. And he's crushing Donald Trump by 30 plus points among that group. Non-whites with a bachelor's degree, again, 30 points plus, with that group. So when you combine them with the closeness of the white vote with these, it widens out Joe Biden's margin. But I'm doing this because I'm stressing to you that it is not simply that, whites with a college degree just started abandoning Republicans. That group is not as white as it was 12 years ago, 10 years ago. It's just not. So it's even more impressive that the generic ballot is looking like 2010. It's even more impressive today than it was in 2010. And by the way, Donald Trump's coalition is more diverse. I know that's going to break brains.
I know. Because
Donald Trump's coalition is more diverse than the generic Republican coalition. Donald Trump does worse among Asians. That's it. He does better among Hispanics, and he does better among black voters. The Republicans do better among all whites, not whites without college degrees, but all whites, and they do a little bit better with Asians. That's what the difference is between their lead and Trump's. It's a 1 point difference in the margin, but they are at 45. Trump's at 42. Trump is ranged from 42 to 47. Biden has ranged from 36 to 44, right? I think, or 43. I'd have to go 42. Because there was one that was Trump 47, Biden 42, I think. I'd have to go back and look, yeah. All right, let me grab a sip of water here while you digest this.
Pulling a Rubio.
Yup. Anyway, let's see. Yeah, let's take a look at the generic ballot while we're at it. Here's the generic ballot by party. Every once in a while, you need something other than water just for taste.
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing like just good water when you're thirsty. And
I
soda and juices, they don't like quench your thirst. Yeah.
Especially when thirsty. Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Go do your. I don't want to talk.
So again, too, unlike, you can talk as much as you want. Unlike the 2024 matchup, okay, there's a major difference here with party crossover. So Trump does considerably better with Democrats than Biden does with Republicans and Trump voters in general. So there are like 3 times more Biden voters who say they would vote for Donald Trump than there are Trump voters who say they would vote for Joe Biden. But generally, even though it looks like 4% crossover to the Democratic candidate, 5 or really 3.9 to 5.4 crossover to the Republican candidate of Democrats, Trump he does better with based crossover, but he does slightly worse with independents. The lead for independents on the generic ballot is 19 points for Republicans, which is why they have a bigger lead. All right. Independent other third parties, let's call it that. So again, they're different coalitions. And that's important to remember. They always were. All right. Independent third party voters, they make up the majority of people. Well, they make up more of them say they would vote for someone else. That will get smaller as time goes on. I think, probably around 2.5%, 3% nationally, somewhere in that ballpark. And there's still a big degree of undecided. There's almost 3 in 10 independents and third party voters who are undecided. All right. But is it big enough that we should expect them to just all of a sudden fall toward Democratic candidates? No, it's not. It's not. And while we're at it, where is my little social desirability bias indicators? I want to go. And here's why. Actually, here's why. Let me start here before I go into the social bias indicators.
And while you do that, just keep this in mind, because this is a good question.
Well, actually, I mean, if it's a relevant question,
it's about
shoot.
Like what Trump's ceiling would be with Black voters and actual voting.
Probably like 15%, 16% nationally. Yeah, probably like 6. We've had them as high as 18. Yep. It's within the sampling error. You got to be realistic. I really do believe that. But Republican ceiling is like 13. Mm-hmm. That's it. And again, breaking down locals. If I'm sure you guys have gone through it a lot, but go through when you get a chance. And here I'm going to add something to the screen and remove this. When you get a chance, go through Hispanic versus non-Hispanic by education and check out the generic ballot versus Donald Trump's, and then race detail. Where's the Asian detail? I'll add it. I don't know why it's not live. I did add it on my end. Let me do it because I want you guys to see this. Give me 1 second. So on demographics, you have a white detail question. On Asians, you have there's white, Hispanic, and Asian detail questions. Now, keep in mind, especially when you get to Asians that are only 3% of this, yes, you're talking about big sampling errors for subgroups. All right. Even Hispanics, they're 11% of this poll, or non-white Hispanics are 11% of this poll. Keep in mind. Now, whites, obviously, the sampling error is less, but for subgroups, you need to keep that in mind. All right. Where should I put it, though? You know what? I'll put it after the education. So we'll do white detail after education. I thought I did this already. I probably didn't hit save. Hispanic detail and Asian detail. All right, and I'll hit save. It's going to go through its thing because it's got to update all the charts and everything. There we go. You know, it's a lot. It's a lot of columns, a lot of rows.
data.
Yeah, a lot of
It's a lot of
columns, a lot of
data.
rows. All right, so I'll refresh this actually so we can see them. There we go. Let's move on. Let's real quick before we move on, just to look at Hispanic detail. All right, so Cubans, they're voting for Trump. Guatemalans voting for Trump. I mean, they're much smaller, but look how close Mexican is now. I mean, this was their biggest group. Puerto Ricans were their big. That's the most liberal group. They're tied at 43. Venezuelans going for Trump. Spaniards, even another one of the larger groups. Colombians are going for Trump. Argentinians, very small, but again, sampling errors. But keep that in mind when you look at some of this stuff. Donald Trump leads with Danish. Why does that matter? Think Pennsylvania. Think some of those other Dutch. Think Pennsylvania. English. Think Pennsylvania. Because actually, Biden was doing much better among those voters than Hillary Clinton was doing. And remember Barnes and I talking on what are the odds when we would go into ethnicity. The state polls, you get much bigger samples for each of these subgroups. So it's more relevant. But English is the biggest of the white subgroup. Still is. And they also can identify as like English American because so many just look, I'm American. And that margin has grown for Donald Trump. It's grown considerably, and he's above 50%. So when you're this early out and it's that dominant, it's a problem. Scottish for Donald Trump. He still loses Swedish, which is, if you think about it, it's a problem for like Minnesota, something like that. Norwegian is also a big thing in Wisconsin and Minnesota, and Trump actually leads with Norwegian descent now. Irish, Joe Biden was supposed to be the Irish man. He's getting killed. Scottish, he's getting killed. Scot-Irish, getting killed. Italians, did I say that already? Still getting killed. So it's for the French, which is also particularly more of a liberal white demographic, is barely voting for Biden, barely going for Biden. So yeah, again, subgroups take them with a grain, but I look at this stuff because they can be red flags. They can definitely be red flags. All right. So, and it's fun. Robert was 100. When he said that, it's been years, I guess now, he was like, listen, you need to track descent to ethnicity. Yeah. And I'm like, that's cool. It sounds cool to me. Let's do it. And it was so predictive. It's not, it really is so predictive. All right. Comfortable, or first, before we move on to comfortable sharing beliefs. Oh, that kind of is hard for you guys to see, isn't it? All right. How's that? All right. Forget about white detail. Let's just go through all. First, before we go on to social indicators, because I try to get so much in an episode. We're already almost to the first half of the hour and first half of the show. If you think of yourself as an independent or something else, are your views aligned more closely to the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, equally close to the Republican Party and Democratic Party, or do they share little in common with either? 27.3% said little in common with either. 32% said the Republican Party. 24% said the Democratic Party. If I would have asked this, and did, frankly, 6 months ago, you would have found this either very even or maybe even slightly toward the Democratic Party. But that has now changed. So when we look at the remaining independents in the electorate who did not identify with one or the other, what do you think you're going to see them do with the remaining 28% who are undecided? Is there any plausible scenario where they all just race to the Democratic candidate and it's like a +6 national victory for Democrats in the House of Representatives? It's freaking dreamland, ladies and gentlemen. That's like pass whatever you're smoking.
Puff, puff, pass.
Puff, puff, pass. Jeez, because you
got some good stuff.
Man. All right, so comfortable sharing political beliefs. Let's just go right to pollsters, and we could take a look at strangers and, the rest of it as we go on. But you'll notice that females, before I get into some of the other stuff, you'll notice that females at 22.6% versus 14.2% for males are much more likely to say they are very uncomfortable being honest with pollsters about their political beliefs. Even somewhat uncomfortable, which is a lesser indicator. We do not give somewhat as much weight as we give very, because when we looked back at 2020, the groups that had the highest error rates were the ones with very. And I guess somewhat did in Michigan, combining somewhat made a little bit more sense. But we were pretty much right on the money, in Michigan. Wisconsin was a biggie. I mean, that you could blow that state bad. So I don't know about Biden plus 17, but you could blow it badly. Biden plus 10. Yeah, absolutely. Which they did, by the way, and more. Even Florida, because some of the older people, some senior groups were more, as opposed to Pennsylvania, where like young black men were very uncomfortable, which a locals member helped me understand, actually. They have mothers and aunts and grandmothers who are loyal Democratic voters, and the last thing they want to hear is that their son is voting for Donald Trump. So they were very uncomfortable. And actually, remember the North Carolina man? And they were like, he was like even being bombarded by Spectrum News, and like shamed. He came out and they were like, who did you vote for? It was early voting. And he was like, he didn't want it. He didn't want to answer at first. Yeah. And then he was like, Donald Trump. And they like shamed him over it. And he was like, this is why I didn't want to tell anybody. He's like, I don't justify myself to you. And I was like, yeah, damn right, brother. Damn right. Damn right you don't. And it's a white woman shaming him.
Irony at its finest.
A white woman. Oh, Lord almighty. Anyway, so just take that into account. And combined, we're looking at basically just under half of women who say that they're uncomfortable talking to pollsters about their political beliefs. And you have about 4 in 10 overall, because of mostly women, because men are only about 3 in 10, but still 4 in 10 average, because women are a larger share of the electorate nationally most of the time. Sometimes it's even, but most of the time that's the case. They are doing, that is, and I have said this before, but it's worth repeating, that's a pollster's worst nightmare. That you're basically being told by almost 4 in 10 voters that I'm not sure I want to tell you the truth. We're the only ones doing something like this. And we are, and this trend has continued. And I want to show you some of these groups, because if the Public Polling Project does anything of value, it's this. It's identifying this, because it really has such big implications for the entire industry. All right, let's look at age. You'll notice, actually, nationally, unlike in Florida, younger voters were actually more likely to say they were very uncomfortable. You have that middle of the road kind of mid-age voter who is the least likely. And then as you get older in age, you see people becoming more likely to not want to be honest again. If we break it down by age detail, you can see this trend a little bit more pronounced. You have 25% again, saying 18 to 24 making up a big chunk, but also 25 to 29 being right along there with them, at almost a quarter of them saying very uncomfortable. And the somewhat isn't shabby either. I mean, it puts them at almost a half, almost 50%. And then it gets a little bit where, 30 to 39, they just don't give a damn anymore. And when I was looking at this, I was like thinking of the Ohio working young man and woman who just really didn't care. I don't know how some pollsters blew Ohio at all. I think it was probably just intentional fudging of the numbers. I don't know how else to explain it, because Ohio was a state where they just didn't give a damn. Yeah, I'm voting for Donald Trump, and if you don't like it, you can stick it up your you-know-what. That right? They were so aggressively pro-Trump. It didn't matter.
They're Trumplicans.
They were Trumplicans, and they're damn proud of it.
And we also saw some of that in Pennsylvania with this age group, but only among whites. Only among whites. All right. All right. So again, it goes down as you get older until you get to like 50, 64, then it starts to rise again. So that's just a great, like a more detailed peek into what we see with age. And this is generally the case. Let's look at ideology, because party is not as, and honestly, it's not as pronounced or as important, because I think worldview informs a lot of this. If you're a liberal today, you have like no reason to fear being honest about your political beliefs. Whereas if you're a conservative, even a moderate, or you consider yourself a moderate because you don't, for instance, support transgender bathrooms or school or competitions like we're seeing with the swimmer, this biological male who is competing as a woman and just crushing these women. They don't like that, but they know it's not a cool belief to have. So they, like conservatives, actually tend to be more likely to say they're very uncomfortable. There is no, I mean, look, there is no reason. Liberals are not targets of censorship or social persecution. And the data reflects that. They just don't care. If you look by region, it's another very interesting one. Very uncomfortable is almost across the board, because we see generally there are people in these areas, no matter where you are. It's a widespread issue, is my point. It's a widespread issue. But however, if you break it down by area, then you actually see the difference. You see a very steady progression from urban to rural. There are more people who tend to be uncomfortable being honest. A couple of points can make all the difference in a poll. Mm-hmm. And when you break down urban, which you can do, locals, if you want, when you break down urban, look by male and female, look by ideology. Suburban, very clear. Suburban women do not feel comfortable. Suburban white women, even more so. Okay? And then rural, generally you either have two sets of groups. They're terrified or they don't give a damn, and they're the fighter, the base fighter, for conservatism or whatever you want to call it. All right. By race detail. All right. Very interesting. Whites overall, not much more likely, but however, Black and African Americans are. Hispanics are. Mm-hmm. So when you look at this, like, who would be the most likely to be a Trump voter who would be afraid outside of a white suburban woman? They're not. They're not white, which again breaks the narrative. And I understand breaks brains. Yes. But the fact of the matter is that's what we have found consistently. By religion, we can check that out. No religion. Protestants are very, are along with other religions, which we can, break down because there are Muslims in there as well. All right. Look at Muslims. Can you blame them? I'm serious, because can you blame them? It's like God knows what they're. Look at what's his name, what's his name, Melber, right? Mm-hmm. Who just got busted by Jack Posobiec, spouting basically anti-gay. I mean, it's Islamic extremism. Jack Posobiec just busted him. Was like, "Yo, NBC, what the hell are you gonna do with this guy?" All right, so can you blame him? And then Catholics and Protestants, there's a good share who are afraid, but as are, the rest of them. So it's really a more complicated problem than the media would like, to try to explain it. Well, those are just evangelicals who are, afraid to say their crazy beliefs. It's just not the case. It's just not true. And it never has been. Okay? I mean, the fact of the matter is it never has been. Where is military? Guys, I'm sorry. Let me throw.
You
I'm
slacking.
slacking here.
Slacker.
Slacking. Should be right after union type. Okay. Updating. God, guys. My bad. Is parental status in here for crying out loud? Should be right after marital. Marital's not. Holy moly. What did I do?
Right there. You just
I know.
missed
I got to update it. I put it in there. Their marital status is not in here either. Holy moly, guys. Let me finish this. Oh,
You're a hot
don't
mess.
take that, guys. Don't take that from me. If I miss some of this stuff, you better look. Rich, where the hell is my parental status? You're slacking, Rich.
And I'll beat him.
Income's in there. Yeah. She'll beat me for it. Self-employed,
watch.
small
It's
business.
live.
Oh, yeah, watch.
Laura Bear speaks.
Well, People's Pundit's wife
is a batter.
Yeah.
A man.
And did you know she's more conservative than him? She must beat him into his conservative views. No. You know they were just don't put anything past those tools. All right, I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything else. Religion detail, followed by evangelical. That should be in there. Military veteran, all that's there. Okay. I got it all now, guys. My bad. I just added like 8 new tables. That's good, though. Can't get enough of data, right? Can't get enough of data. All right. Also, let's dig into this. Let's dig into this index. I will explain how this index is, and current business conditions, first one. I will explain how this index is calculated. Let me give me here. Let me put me here. Actually, let me put me here because I'm going to show the overall index first. As you probably can see streaming on the bottom of the screen. This index, for people who do not know, for those of you maybe joining on Getter for the first time, second time, or very much the first time that we've ever gone over the Registered Voter Economic Confidence Index. And it looks like I'm going to have to do so after the break, but let me say this first, all right? This index very much resembles the Consumer Confidence Index, conducted by Nielsen for the Conference Board. The difference is we do not use 1985 equaling 100 as a baseline. We are doing, kind of bare trends, but it still is calculated by using relative values, okay? And what we ask people is to assign either a positive, neutral, or negative view to reflect your perception for each of the following. There are 5 sub-indicators that make up the index, and there are 2 sub-indexes within the index. I know I'm trying not to lose. I'm trying not to lose anybody here, but just follow along. We ask them to rate positive, neutral, or negative for current business conditions, current employment conditions. Those 2 make up the current situation index. And I'll tell you how we calculate it very soon, after the break, but very soon. Then we ask them for their 6-month outlook. How are you going to feel? What is your expectations in the next 6 months for each of the following? Again, we repeat. Expectations for business conditions, expectations for employment conditions, and then expectations for total family income. That one is the inflation-related indicator. One is an overall economic perception, the business conditions. Employment is obviously the jobs-related indicator, job market. And then the expectations for total family income is the inflation-related indicator. That one particularly is not supposed to sway. But all of these are supposed to move at marginal increments. It's designed not to be volatile. It uses relative values. So when you see what I'm going to show you after the break, it's time to get startled, okay? I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but we'll go over some of them after the break because it's not good, all right?
No bueno.
It's not. There's no way to slice this. All right, so again, real quick, right before the break, you're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. And before we head to break, subscribe to Rumble. please migrate over if you're YouTube locals.com, which Rumble makes it very easy to do by going to that tab right there, locals, in the menu of the right above the video. All right, click that, join the revolution, and you'll get a lot more stuff. You know, the stuff that we're going over, some of the stuff you're hearing but you're not getting, you'll get that on locals. Plus, for those of us who join us on locals, you know, I like to still ban her on Twitter and even get her, but locals is my interactive home, you know, so you'll learn a lot, how we conduct surveys, how we design them. All right. And you'll have a say in them. All right. So again, right there, Rumble viewers, right there, right? I'm pointing it the right way, aren't I?
think so.
I am. You'll see the locals button at the top. Looks very much like, well, I'll show you after the break. Looks very, oh no, didn't I put it over here? I
Yes,
did.
you did.
Looks very much like that. All right. Only it's the locals insignia. Okay. All right. So we'll take a quick 2-minute break. We'll play Bad Habit. And thanks, as always, to the Bone Band. And we'll be back. All right. Stay tuned. More on after the break.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker, so just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love, because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear for a night, just to give into the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
That's funny stuff. Welcome back to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Maris, the People's Pundit. Follow us on locals again, peoplespundit.locals.com. YouTube subscribers, love you to death. Of course, you can subscribe, hit the notification bell, give us a like. That'll all. If you hit the bell, we'll let you know when you're going to go live. But please migrate on over to Rumble and become a subscriber on Rumble. And of course, up there, you can find the locals button. All right. Let's get back into this. All right. So employment is just the real number. It's just abysmal.
The accurate
It's
number.
just it just is, folks. I mean, you're going to see it in the sample. I mean, I know it's registered voters, not all adults. But wait until you see the difference in the sample size, because of course I'm going to show you if they tell us they're employed, then we ask them whether they're a small business owner or not. And you'll see the difference in the sample size. It's egregious. All right. Anyway, first and foremost, let's look at the overall economic confidence index, which I will explain in detail how it is conducted. All right, so this is the trend since last year. When Biden first basically took office, it was pretty much where we thought we would be comparable to the Consumer Conference Board. I don't know why there's a variation now. Maybe that's the difference between adults and registered voters. And maybe that's the difference between using a baseline and not. I mean, as a mathematician, there's definitely a difference there. But at the same time, I didn't think it would be this dramatic of a trend. Maybe, again, registered voters are experiencing something all adults are not. All right. It actually ticked up in June, in the beginning of the summer of 2021. And it looked like things, people were, it was ticking up because people felt better they thought the future was still bright. And even when we asked them in the first, beginning of Joe Biden's administration, they didn't view economic issues as inevitable. So you can see the expectations index was kind of holding solid, and the present situation ticked up from one month to the other. And then when it became clear, and the blue line is the expectations index, we got to that 6 months. How do you feel about the next 6 months? This is why it's so important. And yes, the present situation index began to decline by the end of the summer as well, but the expectations index really started to fall. Mm-hmm. And that drug down the overall index. We had a slight tick up again in fall, and we were wondering whether or not this would recover. It did not. And as we made our way through the fall, made our way through the holidays, all the way to now, headed, and we're in the winter, but we're coming up on, hopefully spring. Will that change the economic dynamic? I don't know. From what people are telling us, they don't see how their major concerns are going to be addressed. And this time, there's a rude awakening. This time, let me get the number. The expectations for total family income, even when the rest of the index was declining considerably, it was kind of hanging on in the 50s. This month, it fell to 37.9. It cratered almost 13 points, 12.8. That is not behavior we have seen over the course of this index. The rest of them, the only thing that did marginally increase was expectations for employment conditions, the 6-month outlook for employment. That rose marginally from 44.5 to 46.1, basically just outside the sampling era. So it's marginal, meaning it could be, much of it could be statistical noise. All right, we'll see if that continues to rise. Is it a trend? I don't know. Expectations for business conditions, the 6-month outlook for overall economy fell 49.5 to 41.7. And I'm kind of going backwards here, but current conditions for employment, that fell from 39.2 to 37.4, while the current business conditions, like the expectations, the overall economy, it also fell dramatically. 40.0 in the last survey from November 22nd to 31.9 for now for January 25th. All right. It's not good news. It's bad news, really bad news. And it definitely would signal a recession in what this index is designed to do for a consumer, for jobs, for inflation. It would definitely signal that we are in an economic downturn. All right. Or we're headed for, we're in one right now, and it'll soon be realized if it doesn't recover. All right. Maybe the holidays, and I'm always a hopeful guy, maybe the holidays had a temporary bump, a temporary decline, because there was so much missing from the shelves. Let's be honest. There was dramatic price increases for certain goods. Many things were out of stock. Even if you were trying to order from Amazon. It is what it is. Maybe that will recover if the holidays are now over and there's less pressure on the supply chain. Maybe it will recover. I'm hopeful, but I just don't. From what I hear from other people, from business leaders, I just don't see. They don't see it. So I tend to take their word, because look at indexes like the Institute for Supply Management. They have non-manufacturing and manufacturing PMIs. Now, the non-manufacturing has been renamed to the services PMI, was about a year ago. And we still have the manufacturing PMI, production managers.
Yeah.
It was all two things. One, it was not inevitable. This didn't have to happen. And I fully believe that if Donald Trump was reelected, it would not have happened. And that's what, if you believe them, like, don't listen to CNBC or Fox Business. You can read these people's response for the panels yourself, and from different industries. And they were, number one, it was not inevitable. And number two, there was this constant threat looming over them that the supply chain, again, we had to reduce business inventories because of these mitigation efforts. We had strikes we had to deal with. I mean, read them yourself. And there was this constant threat looming over them that if they increased business inventories more, and it happened again, they would be out of business.
Mm-hmm.
So they had really no choice but to keep some inventories low. Then when they tried to flood the supply chain again, we had issues with, democratic interest groups, let's face it. And it it exacerbated the bottleneck. So will that fear subside now? What reason do they have? With prices going up, they know that's going to lead to less consumer demand. Or not even demand. The demand will be there. That's going to lead to less personal consumption.
Nathan has a good question in regards to this.
Yeah.
Consumer confidence creators, will prices follow?
Well, right. Well, that's what that's typically the way it is. And that's the question. That's a good, Nathan, right?
Yeah.
That's a good question, Nathan, because typically it's a supply and demand issue. But right now, I'm not sure we can rely on simple supply and demand to reduce prices, because right now it's like the demand is there. It's it's an ability issue. Like I want to go out and buy sirloin steak. I can't find sirloin steak.
Yeah.
And then when I do, will the price be comparable? And if I can find it, will I be able to afford it? So I don't know. We're in a mess here, Nathan. I don't know. We'll have to see. Plus,
I feel like chicken is like the new
the
PlayStation.
true cause of inflation is an increase in the money supply. And they just keep doing this. And the Fed won't raise rates. They are saying they're expecting to raise rates, but they're not doing it. Jerome Powell said, we're going to be very timid when we do make moves. So we're not dealing with the underlying cause. In fact, even if it was a Republican Congress, would they really, and I hate to ask this question, but it's just true, would they really deal with the underlying cause of inflation? They're not incentivized to do so. It hurts the White House. So, politically, you're going to have like America First people in Congress fighting for it. Will the leadership really allow them to wage that fight? I don't know. There's just so much uncertainty, and neither do business owners. So there's so much uncertainty there. All right. So I'm going to leave this one up here to explain to you how we come to 31.9 for this particular index that's showing, or indicator, excuse me. I don't want to confuse anybody.
Yeah, don't, because
This particular indicator, where do we come up with its relative value? So it's very simple. Neutral plays only one part in it, and that is when we divide the positive by the sum of the positive and negative. That is how we come up with this relative value. It's the same thing Consumer Confidence Index does. So you're going to, add up, and I cheat too. All right. So, and you have to look at, when you do that, you have to look at them as whole numbers. All right. And I know I'm losing some people here, but I'm going to make it as easy as possible. All right. 18.3, who told us they have a positive view, plus 39.1 gives us 66. We're going to take 66 and divide it by 18.3. which gives us, all right, or I'm sorry, we're going to take 18.3 and 18.3 and divide it by 66, which gives us that value. Okay, so where's my locals? Didn't I just show you where I did this on locals, or no?
No, you didn't.
I didn't.
I don't think.
I'll drop the methodology into it.
But this is why you need to join peoplespundit.com.
That's right. That's right. Right. So basically, and then we get all these relative values for the first three indicators, and then we add them. They're averaged together. We add them. The current business conditions with the current employment conditions. They're added together, and I'm going to give you that right now. 31, blah, blah. It's 37.4 divided by 2 gives us, because you're getting an average, right? So what do we do with an average? We add everything together, and then we divide it by how many we added together. All right. And that gives us the overall index, which you see here, which is 34.65. Now, when you do the relative value, they come to decimals. All right. And you have to look at them as whole numbers. So we do just that first decimal. Right. And we could do 2, but it would come to
really granular.
Yeah, it's getting way granular and out of control. So I'm trying, and by the way, they don't at the Consumer Conference Board. They do the first, position. So 34.65 turns into 34.7. That is how we come up with the level for the sub-index for the overall index for current conditions. All right, and then we do the same thing for the other 3. Look at, by the way, small business owners. Only out of all the people we spoke to, 1,102 are in this subsample because that's who told us they were employed. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's horrible. But the household survey for the Bureau of Labor Statistics does things a little different. They come up with their unemployment rate a lot different than just simply asking people who's employed and then looking at that level, which, by the way, employment overall was employment overall, employed full-time, employed part-time.
Tony said, did you see the job miss this month of 500K?
It's horrible.
It's
horrible. But you know what? It doesn't surprise me because of what I see here, which is last month it was like 54. Now it's 51. There's methodological gimmicks that are played with the household survey. And it's sad because under Donald Trump, we saw the employment rate fall, but the employment population ratio and the labor force participation rate both increase as employment was still declining. And that is a sign that you have a truly strong labor market. Under Obama and now Biden, when the labor force participation fell and the employment population ratio fell, then it led to lower employment. You are not seeing this infusion of people rising to like that critical threshold on the labor force participation rate is 63%. We hadn't hit that post Great Recession until Donald Trump was president. And maintained it. We could be north of 64 right now. It's very disappointing. Very disappointing. It just is, frankly. All right, so terrible. 864 told us they were employed full-time. 238 told us they were employed part-time. 133 told us they were unemployed, but they were still looking. But 122 told us they were unemployed and not looking. 130 were disabled. 38 were students. And 518 were retired. All right, so it just sucks. It really does. For current business conditions, overall, 18.3% had a positive view. That's the lowest we've ever found. Among those who were employed full-time, it was higher, 21.2. And you guys can see this right now, right? Yes. Employed part-time was 16.3. You would expect people who are employed full-time to be a little bit more rosy about the job, about overall economy, which is what this indicator is, the overall economy. Employed part-time is 16.3. Employed but looking, so these are the people who are suffering the most. They don't have a job, but they're looking. And they only have only 13.1% told us they have a positive view. Even those who are part-time employed, they don't want to be part-time employed, a lot of these people. Only 16.3% had a positive view of the overall economy. Unemployed, not looking, they quit. 11%. They just quit. They're either getting unemployment benefits that they're trying to exhaust, or they quit looking. These are like people who quit on the American dream. There's just no way to put it. There's no other way to put it. 12.5% for disabled, which, students have no good prospects on the economy. They feel when they get out of being a student, it's going to be bad. And not just when they get out, right now. If they were to leave school right now, they have a very pessimistic view about the economy. Those who are retired are closer to employed full-time because, of course, they're retired. And of course, this is actually down, though. The retired number, I think it was in the 35 in the first survey. So it's come down quite a bit. Now, if we look at just the jobs market, if you're employed full-time, you have a rosier view. If you're employed part-time, you do not. 20%. Overall, it's 23.8. If you're unemployed but you're looking, you only 15.7% of you have a positive view of the labor market. If you're unemployed not looking, sad category, 14.3. Retired is another high group. Two of the biggest groups have a higher than average, which is why that average is why that's even 23.8. Those who really need the labor market to be good have the most pessimistic view about it. Right? So it's sad, man. All right. What about expectations? 26.8. It's much better than the current condition. 26.8 have a positive view of the economy moving forward in 6 months. Not great, but better than the current. If you're employed part-time, you're below that average. If you're unemployed but you're looking, you're below that average. If you're unemployed but not looking, you're even more below that average. Disabled, student, down the line. Only the retired, again, have a higher than average view of it. What about for jobs in the next 6 months? If you're employed full-time, 33.7% of you said, you know what? Not bad. Overall, you're contributing to that 31.3 positive. Part-time drops. Unemployed but looking drops even more. Unemployed not looking drops even more. You see the story here? Again, if you are okay, if you have a job, I mean, you're still not viewing these conditions good, but you're still significantly better than those who are less fortunate. Let me put it that way. Go ahead. You got something before I go for total family income?
So if I'm a college student working part-time, which does he prefer to select, student or working part-time?
You know what? That's different. People, most of them will say part-time. Yeah, because we only want students who are just students, and you have to do that because speaking of Quinnipiac, they got into a pretty sticky situation trying to wait for working class because students were being included in their working class number. So it didn't look like his margin was as big as it was in Ohio. That, their Ohio numbers were off by 11, 12% points. And it was a bad miss. Or no, 14. Excuse me. Sorry. They had Biden plus 4 in their final. So what they were doing was essentially packing students into that working class number. We just want students who are students to tell us they're students. If you're part-time and you're out of school, then pick part-time. If you're part-time and you're in school, we want them to pick part-time. All right. Moving on here. But that was a good question.
Yeah.
Total family income, 24.3%. Better than some of the others. Positive rating than some of the other indicators got. but still not good compared to our overall trend. Employed, working full-time, 29.3%. So they're a little bit better. Employed working part-time, worse. Employed looking, significantly worse. Employed not looking, significantly worse. The retirees are lower than the national average on this particular indicator. So what retirees are telling us is that 6 months from now, inflation is going to hurt their fixed income. These are people who live on a fixed income. Many of them, most of them. They don't have these assets that they could tap into. They have their Social Security check. Maybe they have a pension. Maybe they're drawing off of an annuity or a combination of these things.
But that's it.
But that's it. What they got is what they got. And only 24%, less than 24%, are positive, have a positive view about how it's going to be 6 months from now. Look at the negative number with retirees. 43.2%. Almost with people who are employed part-time, and more than people who are employed but unemployed but looking. More than people who do not have a job but are looking. And by the way, you see how they can come up with that unemployment number, folks? Especially if this number becomes almost equal to this number. Because these people are not considered when they calculate the unemployment number. Understand, the unemployed but looking and unemployed not looking are almost the same size. So if you completely reject these people from your calculation and your methodology, are you giving an accurate portrayal? If they were a much smaller percentage, then it wouldn't have such a great impact on the overall equation. But if they're of equal percentage, or just about, then you're looking at some serious distortion of the real picture, which is why U6 took such a long time. After the shutdown, when Trump was still president, the U6 rate, it's an alternative measure of unemployment, otherwise known as the real unemployment rate, a lot of people call it. The U6 rate fell more in 5 months than it did in 5 years under Barack Obama. 5 years. It's a big deal. You don't really want to see me drinking water, so let me put this full screen while we look at small business owners. You may notice small business owners have a much better outlook, still not great, but much better outlook than workers. If they're employed either full-time or part-time, they get this question because you know what? Small business owners can be part-time. It's not just full. Now, I don't know many small business owners who are really trying to grow their business who work part-time. We damn sure don't, right, Laura? But they're out there. You know, I got a neighbor who bakes cakes. I got 2 neighbors who bake cakes.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes, you know, they are more like part-time, at least one of them, than full-time. In any event, it's still appropriate for us, and my point being that it's appropriate for us to ask this. 27.4% of the overall working population had a positive view of total or you know, positive view of how their income would be 6 months from now, how it would hold up. And if you go to today, general business conditions for them, it's still much worse. 20% positive. Why? Because small business owners were 26.1% positive, but people who are workers, 17.8. So the little guy is the one getting hammered. Why am I going over this when it can actually run the risk of being rather boring? To show you how much badly it is for the little guy right now than it was a year ago. To explain, too, why Donald Trump is winning 61% of the working class vote.
Well, this is also very telling. You need to know the future of what's coming.
What's coming? Yeah.
And if you don't know this granular data, you don't get to prepare yourself. So in essence, we're preparing you. And that's what we're doing. Yes, data sometimes is not so much fun to explain.
Yeah.
But it is a fact of life. We'd rather you prepared than
get prepared.
unprepared.
Yep.
Knowledge is power.
Like when we saw some of these some of these warning signs in the data that Christmas was coming and people were going to have a seriously difficult time finding some of their stuff. I do want to go over shortages first, but real quick before we do, I am going to put myself up in solo layout here for a second, okay? And I'm going to get to some of your questions, all right? The New York State Congressional map, if it ends up, the first one was clearly illegal. 2 Republican seats, clearly illegal. But Lee Zeldin's getting screwed, all right? Even though he represents the last Republican area of New York City, or the New York area, all right? I wouldn't call it the city because it's not. I mean, it's not. But Staten Island and Long Island are the last Republican remaining bastions in New York, that state, the New York City area, okay? To try to dilute their vote with urban areas in Kings County is totally unacceptable. You're just using population. You're not considering any of the other considerations. They are in no way, shape, or form similar in culture, in even income in some areas, geography, nothing. They're totally different people. They're living on Long Island for a reason. They're living in Staten Island for a reason. All right? Look, I'm not trying to be a schmuck here, but they don't have anything in common with kings or queens.
Nope.
So but that being said, to come out with 4 Republican seats, 22-4, that's reasonable. I have to be honest. 4 is reasonable. It is. New York, like a state like California, for instance, Democrats love to whine, right? Like that schmuck over at that other schmuck election forecast site that sucks. He constantly bellows on and on. How could they do this in North Carolina? Biden won this much of the vote. Trump barely won it. How could they do this in Texas? Percentage of the vote has nothing to do with it. Can you give Donald Trump 33% of the... Can you give Republicans 33% of the congressional districts in the state of California because Donald Trump won 33%? No. It's not viable. It's just not going to work out. And that being said, Democrats don't deserve 47% of the districts in Florida. Really? Democrats should probably have no more than 2 seats in the state of Florida. Sorry. And if that, they'd have to fight for the one in that really goes through Miami.
Mm-hmm.
They'd have to fight for that still. They'd get Browards and Palms. That would be a considerably safe Democratic seat. The rest of it, Tallahassee is not enough population to just drown out the rest of Duval, and it's nonsense. It's total nonsense. New York State, though, it's kind of hard to find more than 4 Republican seats. It is. Now, I have heard a good argument for 5 is, but the fact of the matter is what they're doing is using Albany to dilute the rest of the conservative vote and the rest of the state. I see Elise Stefanik's probably not happy, or she's happier than Tierney, but, that's a good question. I just think New York State's not one of the more egregious examples. You have states like California, you have states like out in New Mexico, Oregon, Washington. These were egregious examples of gerrying. And Florida, you better take your heads out of your butt. Take your heads out of your butt. Don't think about right now. Think about 2 years from now, 4 years from now. And this idea that you can't use political advantage in your calculations, shut up. They're all considering political advantage. Michigan. They turned Michigan 3 from an R leaning, R6 leaning district to a D3. They're doing a better job. Now, D3 does not make it a Democratic district, especially not in this cycle, for sure. Right. What else we got here? You know what? That's a good question. Who asked this thought about the Illinois governor's race. Somebody asked a previous question about it. Give me a little bit of time. Not sure what to make out of Irving yet. Give me a little bit of time. Mark Kelly is raising a ton of money because Mark Kelly has been a loyal vote for the radical left. Mark Kelly ran as a moderate, which is why he won by 6 points when, Joe Biden didn't. And, that moderate to conservative independent voter that Donald Trump was beating Biden by in that state by 30 points. They were tied among Martha McSally and Mark Kelly. They bought it hook, line, and sinker. And he's being rewarded by dark money for being a radical leftist voter, a vote in the upper chamber. Now, Sinema is going to run into problems and will have to raise money from other avenues. She'll be all right, but she has chosen to align herself more with voters than Mark Kelly has. Mark Kelly, look, I told you guys how this was going to go. And here's one of the points where Rich is going to be brutally honest. The man used the shooting of his wife to garner sympathy. He was never a moderate. He was about as moderate as Bill Nelson was in the final stages of his Senate career in Florida. He used his experience as an astronaut to try to play to older conservative voters too. He used his experience with the military to try to play with that, and he definitely exploited the shooting of his wife to garner sympathy votes. But he was never a moderate. And you could tell by how he reacted to the shooting of his wife. And God forbid, I feel for the man. I'm a married man myself. I get it. But I'm not sure I would change my fundamental principles and I know that to be the case because I was not from a great neighborhood. Gun control was prevalent, strict, very strict. It never stopped guns. It never stopped the criminals. And they didn't come from Alabama. They came from corrupt politicians and organized crime. They didn't come from some phony gun show in Florida where they don't ask you for your license. Been to numerous gun shows in Florida. I dare you to try to walk away with a gun at a gun show that same day without showing your concealed permit. Knock yourself out. Now, can it happen? I'm sure. I've just never seen a gun show where it did happen before. And even if it did, again, guns that are confiscated before somebody gets thrown in Rikers Island and then is sold by some crooked politician or with police friends who have access. That's where the guns came from in my neighborhood. And I never changed my views. It didn't work. Those laws never worked. Especially against AR-15s. Gun violence was handgun violence. Not that I'm making a case for handgun. I'm not. I like my handguns entirely too much. I'm just saying. Wasn't people running around with squad automatic weapons, otherwise known as the saw, lighting up the block. There was somebody who just got a 32 off some crooked cop, or a 45, or a 22. Small caliber actually was much more popular because it was not as loud. Crap. And he used that. He exploited what happened to his wife. Like Hillary Clinton cried before the New Hampshire primary. And he got into the Senate and did exactly what Martha McSally said he would do. And he's being rewarded for it. And for all of the talk, the anti-Citizens United talk, Democrats have become far more proficient at raising and using dark money than Republicans. It's not even close, especially when it comes to House and Senate races. It's not even close. If you're a Democrat who's upset about Citizens United and if you're, as a matter of principle, offended and opposed, then you should be looking at your own party, because that's where it's all going. Tony, are there any polls for the Georgia governor's race? I think we will be polling it again for CD Media. The last one we did conduct, I could give you, it's been a while. David Perdue wasn't in that race yet. So especially if you're looking at the primary, Perdue was not in that race. Donald Trump's endorsement carried a lot of weight, about a 50-point swing for Vernon Jones, but we didn't ask what about for David Perdue, number one, who seems to be struggling. Secondly, I'm not sure it would have that impact for David Perdue because the Trump voter is pissed at David Perdue. Pissed. And I'm not sure Donald Trump can even fix that with an endorsement. Secondly, it goes to what I was saying last week, which is, if you are, lucky enough as a Republican to get Donald Trump's endorsement, you damn well better pay him back by working. And there are way too many candidates who just get this man's endorsement and then think they're going to sit on their butt and get elected. You owe it to the man to work. Work like you deserve that endorsement. And David Perdue is among several who are not doing that. He thought he was just going to go to the Perdue family friends and the establishment, and, I got the Trump base, I got establishment friends, and yeah, I'm on my way to win. Wrong answer. Just like it was before, which is why you lost, which is why you underperformed Donald Trump in the Atlanta metro area. Can we predict how pop culture will go with this poll, or is that tainted by corporations? Vanessa, do you mean like cancel culture or pop culture? That's an interesting question. I just don't. I'm not exactly sure what you mean, and then second, there's definitely pop culture related questions we can ask, but it is a little bit difficult, to get. It really depends on what you want to do. Yeah, if Laura could maybe give me a little bit more clarification on what you mean by that, I'd be happy to come back around and answer it. I know it's very early, but what are the odds? Laura, the one asked by Vanessa, can we predict how pop culture will go with this poll, or is it that tainted by corporations? If I think I understand her correctly, there's going to be a strong social bias problem there, maybe even association bias, but we'll see. I know this is very early, Steve asks, but what are the odds the Republicans win a veto-proof majority in Congress this November? I'm not sure the Senate map is there for them on that. I just don't think that's possible. Anything's possible, but I just don't. That's way more seats than we have, as a viable target list. In the House, I think people should kind of tamp down their expectations for two reasons. When Republicans won more than 60 seats in the House, it was after the Democrats had won a landslide victory with Obama's presidential election. They won seats they never should have won. And then they took a radically left turn that isolated people like Jason Altmaier. And no matter how conservative he even tried to remain, he got painted with that brush, and him and many others were just totally wiped off the map. There isn't an overextension at play right now with Democrats like there was in 2010. That's number one. And number two, Republicans fought hard with redistricting last time. They did not this time. They're kind of losing that battle, and they have lost opportunities that they should have had. They're also sabotaging their own in some places. Full disclosure, like you guys know, I have polled for David Giglio in California 13. It's an open district that they wrote that is majority Hispanic. One of the areas Larry Elder did the best. Donald Trump lost the district 54-44, so it's within 10 points. the average swing right now, as you guys know, is about 14 points away from Democrats. Looking at New Jersey and Virginia, it is well within the realm of winnable because you have so many Hispanic men who, when we ask in the rematch, who'd you vote for? They told us, Biden. I did. Now, who would you vote for? Trump, hands down. What about the generic ballot? I'm a little bit hesitant on Republicans. So if like a Trump-aligned candidate came in there, did well with the base, and then continued to reach out and win those voters who voted yes to recall Gavin Newsom, because it is only in that part of the state where they did. The biggest 3 major counties that are in that district voted yes. Larry Elder won 58% in one and 60+% in the other 2. Winnable district, but Republicans seem intent, dedicated to the prospect of electing a Democrat. Many of these so-called local Republican leaders endorsed Adam Gray, who they are arguing will be a moderate. He is not. He is endorsed by, he's whatever he needs to be. That's what Adam Gray is. He runs like a coward for many key votes, except he was the decisive vote on the gas tax. And here you have a bunch of Republicans who are defeatists, used to losing locally, thinking that he's going to win and the huge numbers of the base are going to vote for him. Let me say this very clearly right now. No base Republican is going to vote for a D this year. Not happening. But this is how stupid some of these people are. They really believe that. They really do. And it's sad because there are a lot of donors in the area who love Donald Trump, yet are being told just to donate to the Democrat because Republicans, this guy's a moderate Democrat and he's likely to win. BS. It is prime and right for a Republican to win an open seat in California for the first time in many, many years. So if Republicans don't get their act together, a seat like that could essentially be forfeited when it's absolutely a winnable seat right now. Absolutely. I've polled it myself, and as the only pollster out there who found that the Central Valley would in fact vote yes, while Orange County and San Diego would vote no, I think I have a little bit more authority than the rest of them. So you have a seat like that, depending on what they do in Florida. That could be a -1 or 2. Probably just -1, to be honest. But, there's one in New Mexico that swung 30 points in 2020. It was on the verge of going. They split that up and packed it with Albuquerque. And there's a lot of these. So I'm just saying, even though the lead for Republicans is big, the idea that they could get to a supermajority may be difficult if redistricting continues to go the way it's going. All right. But there are always surprises and always districts that just wind up going. And everybody's like, oh, my God, this is a catastrophe. The House of Delegates, I'd have to go back and look. We had at best 50-50 if Republicans were going to have a great night. And we had 2 target districts that we were looking at, but we're like, you know what? This one's got a lot of precincts. There's not much Hispanic vote in the state, but there's a lot of precincts that are majority Hispanic or plurality Hispanic, and then plurality Black. And Republicans won them overall anyway. So we just didn't see that coming. We did see the swing in Hispanics, and we did see the increase in Black vote share. You guys know that. We went over it all. But when it's a wipeout, it is possible to take some of these other districts. It's just Republicans seem intent on sabotaging themselves. And by the way, in California, they're doing that purely out of this personal vendetta. They hate Donald Trump, and they want the California Republican Party purged of Trumpism. They want the delegates. They want whatever chump has sat down and agreed that they can have the delegates after what happened with Faulkner, embarrassed the hell out of the state party. Larry Elder came out of nowhere and just relegated the guy to irrelevance. So, I don't know where. Speaking of Larry, no, sometimes you hear once in a while. You might want to take a look at it. That's all I'm saying. That was your neck of the woods. They loved you there. You outperformed there. I mean, if you leave it up to the Republican establishment, guys, they will blow every opportunity. I mean, they are the best at snatching defeat out of the hands of victory. They're stupid, they're corrupt, and they're scared. That's who they are. So I'm saying, of course, I think the Republicans are going to take back the House of Representatives. They don't have much to get there. But right now, my expectations are a little bit tamped down until I see the remaining, what's going on with the rest of the playing field. Okay? And I'm not saying that to add negativity to Republicans by any means. Be optimistic if you're a Republican. I'm simply saying until I see some of this stuff work out and where everything falls, I need to just give it a second. All right. The RNC getting forced out or leaving. We'll see who's the replacement. We'll see how they act. I answered that one already. How many are falling below the middle class? The middle class is getting wiped out. I mean, the middle class is getting wiped out. It had a temporary reprieve under Donald Trump. But the overall trend for the middle class has been bad for 20 years. And now we're seeing, sadly, a reversion. We're reverting to the era of Barack Obama. It's probably going to be, honestly, it's going to be worse than Barack Obama. You have to understand, GDP has been distorted. So he's getting these abysmal numbers, even though it's distorted. When you have these horrible downturns, and they were really a self-imposed downturn, you should see these giant regains like we saw under Trump. And he took credit for the tail end of Trump's rebound. And even though Donald Trump, there is no president who saw more jobs created under his presidency than Donald Trump. In a month, it was Ronald Reagan, who got almost 1 million one month and 700,000 the next. Donald Trump set the record. But it was because of a severe downturn. And that is what you're supposed to expect when we recover. You're supposed to, the more severe the downturn, the stronger the recovery, the bigger the numbers will be. But Donald Trump got out, Joe Biden took the reins, and it just whiffed. We needed 800,000, 1.2 million, 1.5 million constantly. And they're out there like, woo, 500,000. We beat the consensus by 50,000. That is not enough. Sorry. Am I still taking polling for this month for congressional races? I'm talking specifically for Texas Congressional District 2. We haven't been, with the Public Polling Project, we haven't been doing congressional races. I'm not sure we'd be able to afford to do that. I'm not sure, because if there was somebody who was a viewer and said, look, I'm interested in doing this poll, and they had it, I would do it. But there are just so many congressional races that there's not enough. Our current contribution base for the Public Polling Project is just not big enough. What's up with Nancy Pelosi not retiring? Well, because I think they do think that this is getting a little bit better for them. Plus, I think she wants to stick around for influence. It could go, if she packs up and goes home, then we don't know what she's been up to. We don't know what the next leader of the House is going to find she was up to when it came to the Capitol Police and whatnot. So I think that she thinks the Republican, that redistricting-wise, they have done a lot to help whittle down how dominant the Republican majority is going to be. Because Democrats are an effective minority, let's face it. Republicans are not. With the number of seats Republicans have in the Senate and the House right now, they would have, if they were as half the fighters that Democrats were, they would have ground everything to a halt. As a matter of fact, Joe Biden wouldn't even have a cabinet right now, right? he wouldn't even have a government because Republicans had a majority, big majorities, and they still stopped Donald Trump from getting nominees every president is afforded to have. They grinded him to a halt. So if you're Nancy Pelosi, why would you think, anything's going to be different? You could remain around even if you're the minority leader and still feel good about it. Let's take a look at what you're yeah, and Lamp Crow, you got a good idea. Look what happened when Paul Ryan said he was out. It does cause panic. Let me see what you're saying here, Tom, because Dr. Oz. Yeah, and I got to tell you, though, Dr. Oz, I found some statements that if you're a Republican, you're not going to like. Past statements and not so distant past statements. That being said, I think that if he's being earnest on the lockdowns, and if he's being earnest, he has chosen to take this anti-lockdown position, this we need a completely new COVID strategy position, that we need to look at the well-established science of immunity position, that we need to look at the well-established science of other treatments that are effective and not, go the direction of mandates. If he's earnest, then it may not be a bad choice. Unfortunately, Pennsylvania has got to come to grips, Republicans in Pennsylvania have to come to grips with the fact that Democrats will do anything to take out a candidate that they're afraid of, including prison and including using family court to effectively destroy the runner. I would have called Sean Parnell the favorite. I would have said Sean Parnell was like 65% favored to win that race. I really do. I don't know what other people think. I don't give a damn. I think Sean Parnell was headed for like a 4 to 5 point win. That's a good question, though. But now you got to understand he's gone. So I know it sucks, but remember what they did to him. Number one, remember what they did. So the next time they choose to use something like family court, you won't be shocked, because they did. We only got a few minutes. I want to go over this real quick before the end of the show. We're almost there. Meat and poultry. So we have 26% of the country who told us that we're regularly experiencing shortages with meat and poultry, and 44.8% who said they were occasionally experiencing shortages. On inflation, wait till you see this. Meat and poultry, 52% say, yes, I'm experiencing significant increases in the price of meat and poultry. Another 31.5% said, yes, they're experiencing modest increases in meat and poultry. So really goes to show you. And locals, you guys, you got this. You can go through this a lot. I want to show a couple of things. I'm going to skip around. Fruit and vegetables, 21.3% said yes, regular shortages on fruit and vegetables. 38.4% said occasional shortages of fruit and vegetables. And on inflation, which kind of surprised me, 36% said yes, significant increases. Another 44% said yes, modest increases. On paper goods, 39% say they are experiencing significant increases in the cost of paper goods and products like paper plates, towels, napkins, etc. Another 41.3% said they're experiencing modest. And on shortages with paper products, 30% said regularly, 49%, just under a majority, said occasionally. Canned goods, I think, was the other one, right? I wanted to show you. 20% said regular shortages for canned goods. 40% said occasional shortages of canned goods. And on price increases, 29% said significant price increases with canned goods. 41% said modest increases with canned goods. Milk and dairy, something we know from numbers, we can actually see. Shortages, 21.1% said yes, regular shortages. 39% basically said occasional shortages. And when it came to price increases, inflation, 38% said yes, significant increases in the cost of milk and dairy products. Another 41% said modest increases in those products. A lot of good stuff here. It's 2:00. I am out of time. That sucks. But we can go over more tomorrow. There's a lot more to go over, a lot more to go into. And I didn't get into the social desirability bias. Oh, yes, I did. Okay, cool. So that's good. So there's, and Laura's spouting out a lot of other stuff. This poll was big. There was a lot of goodies in this poll. So we absolutely have a lot still to talk about on Friday. And we'll have Don, of course, on to talk about our Q&A. Don from the Don Smith Show, as always. Life of Brian, let me answer this real quick. I think that there is a lot of pushback on his endorsement. He's talking about Tennessee 5, Life of Brian. He's talking about Tennessee 5. And Robbie Starbuck, young Hispanic, vibrant candidate, who is running against, she's not in yet. She worked for the State Department, and a lot of people who were in Trump's inner circle do not like her and said that she was a constant disruption to the Trump agenda. She was more loyal to Pompeo, et cetera, et cetera. And they're pissed about this endorsement when Robbie Starbuck clearly is the most solid base candidate for that race. I think it was like a preemptive endorsement. It wasn't in stone. And I think that he said, I'd be happy to give her if she chooses to run. I think there's some time to write that. That morning, man, I had like 15 text messages, including the people close to Trump, just like, this pisses me off, and you're not going to like them all, guys. You're not going to like, I think Trump likes to reward loyalty. She worked for him at the State Department. And I think he likes to reward loyalty. Still doesn't mean, without a doubt, Robbie Starbuck is not the better candidate for that race. The guy is solid. If you're a Trump supporter, or you're not even an America First supporter, it's Robbie, and it's Robbie hands down. Period. All right. That, and again, as I have told you, who do you want to be the face of your party? If you're a Republican, I'm talking to you. Who do you want to be the face of your party moving forward in the future, in the mid and even the long term? Should they think you're the party of white people? That's what Democrats say. So should you go with an establishment privileged woman who's very typical looking of a Republican woman? Or should you go with a young, vibrant Hispanic who is solid on America First? You have to start making these decisions on who you want to be your leaders, to be your representatives, because I don't like racial identity politics any more than the base Republican voter does. But I hate it, in fact. But perception does matter. Hispanics don't vote based on someone's last name. That's garbage. I'm simply saying perceptions, they do matter. All right? All right. So with that in mind, I'm going to go. Right before I do, again, Rumble viewers, well, if you're not on Rumble, if you're on YouTube, please subscribe to Rumble. That is number one, first and foremost. And of course, if you are on Rumble and you're watching this, they make it very easy for you. Right up there in the menu bar, top over my head right now, top and over that way, you'll see the locals subscribe button. They make it very easy. Sign up to peoplespundit.locals.com and you will get a lot of the stuff that you did not see here that we referenced. That's number one. But you'll also get to see how we design surveys. You'll have your input on them. You'll learn a lot about them. You get a lot of other stuff, a lot of other content, voter analysis, the whole, 9 yards, which we've talked about today. Plus more, it's going to be, like I said, I still like to fire off on Twitter and get her here and there, but Locals is definitely the home from this point on. It really is. And Rumble is integrated with Locals. It makes they are making it as convenient for people as possible to connect and see subscriber content. Creator content. So it only makes sense. So like I said, sign up to peoplespundit.locals.com right there, and we have some big things for this year. This year we have high hopes, but we have a lot of big things planned for this year. 2021 was good to us, and this is an election year. We're like cyclical. Didn't expect 2021 to be so good. We love you guys for that. But this is an election year, and we got a lot of things planned, a lot of things in the works that are going to be really cool. All right, including our own graphics for the elections. We're probably going to do. I don't want to say it yet, but I think I want the primaries too. It's going to be really cool. It really will. Again, though, a lot of that stuff's only going to be accessible to people who do join on Locals. All right. So with that in mind, we're 5 minutes over. Don't forget to join us on Friday Inside the Numbers, noon is the new time. A lot of people asked us not to butt heads with War Room, and we're not. And you know, the others. It was the original time people wanted anyway, or 6 p.m. in the evening. But back then, when we first started, there was, the late great and impossible to compete with Rush Limbaugh. So we didn't do it. We went before, and now, we can accommodate you for that. All right, so I'm out of here. Laura will fire off all the links, of course, as we do that, as we go. I'm going to leave you with Bad Habit. And still, of course, follow us on Getter at People's Pundit. You'll see Laura's on there. You want to follow Laura. Laura's right on my profile at Laura Barris. And check out the Public Polling Project. There'll be a new one up soon, but we're still a little bit shy of the other one. If it is what it is, whatever, we'll roll with it. But share it. And I do see the 2020 for some reason. Something's happening with it. I'll fix it. It's JavaScript probably. All right. So, hit the like button. But on YouTube, if you hit the like button, hit the notification bell. If you're a subscriber, if you're not subscribed, the notification bell will let you know when we're going to go live. But guess what? On Rumble, you don't even have to do that. Just hit subscribe and they'll shoot you out a notification. All right, folks, I'm out. Like Trap. See you soon.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a knife, just to give into the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away.